In the last video, we spoke about the preparation for uprooting the Israeli Jews out of Palestine because they did not obey the Lord and were careful about His commands. He said, you take care of my commands and obey me, you will live wonderful in the land. But you disobey, you offend me, I'll kick you out. And He did. So, how He prepared for this action, major action actually, to throw them out of Palestine, the Holy Land. The first thing that happened, as we mentioned in the previous video, Solomon gave him an empire that stretched all the way down south to Sheba, which is Yemen today, and all the way to Babylon, which is Iraq today. Then came, after his death, his children, the children of Solomon. There were many. So they took this empire and divided amongst themselves. Every son had a part of this empire. It was divided. After it was one strong empire, Solomon left behind. Now it became many countries. Small, small, small. None of them can stand any war or any enemy coming to occupy. So they became so weak. And they abused the Babylonians so bad after Solomon. Solomon was wise. He wouldn't abuse Sheba, he wouldn't abuse Babylon, he wouldn't abuse Jordan, none of the countries under his control. He wouldn't do that. He is very wise, very smart. But his sons were so stupid. And they did abuse the Babylonians. And that was one of the worst mistakes that they ever done. Then the time came when in northern part of what is today's Iraq, in the northern part, a kingdom rose based on the worship and the faith of the god of war, Ashur. And the people who used to worship this god of war, Ashur, used to be called Assyrians in the northern part. So the Assyrians came all over what is called today Iraq, put it under control, under the Assyrians' control, and then they moved against their enemies from the Israelis, the sons of Solomon and their people, the two kingdoms that were ruled by David and his son, Samaria and Judea. So they came against them. They came against the northern kingdom, actually, Samaria in the north. So the northern kingdom came against the northern kingdom. They killed half of the Israeli, and what's left from them, they took them as slaves to Assyria, the northern kingdom of what is called today Iraq. Again, the turn of time came after a few years. Now there rose another kingdom in the south of what's today is called Iraq. And this kingdom was called Babylon. And Babylon was so strong. So they launched, a war against Assyria. And they gained all of what is called today Iraq under their control. And this time they came after their enemies from the Israelis who abused them after Solomon's death. They went to the southern kingdom. So this is southern kingdom going against southern kingdom of Israeli Jews, Judea. They killed 50% of the people, the Jews, Israeli Jews. And they took the rest as slaves to Babylon. So now both kingdoms, Samaria and Judea, all the Israeli and Israeli Jews became slaves all over Babylon, from down south all the way up north, where Assyria used to be. And Assyria is no more at this time. Now, little time passed. Again, history is repeating itself. Another empire rose up in the east, named Persia, and had a strong army with numbers of soldiers in it. So Persia felt such strength. The first thing that came to the mind of the Persians, let us invade and control. So they went to the neighboring country of Babylon. They defeated the Babylonians, who had control over all of what is today called Iraq, and they continued all the way to Palestine that was under the control of the Babylonians. So everything the Babylonians had, now it's in the hands of Persia, all the way to Sheba. They even went, to Sheba, but in a friendly manner. Sheba was in a friendly manner. And the king of Sheba became like a servant to the king of Persia. So, an aide. And he kept him as a king over the land. So for a period of time, now the Israelis were spread between the two kingdoms, Old Babylon and New Persia, the empire of Persia. The Israelis were spread as slaves in the two lands, Babylon and Persia. And according to the Christians and the Jews, this slavery, they call it captivity for kindness, but there is nothing kind about this slavery. It was worse than Egypt. Horrific. So much trouble. Many Israelis died, even after 50% at the hands of the armies, and now from sickness and disease, slavery, oppression, pressure, you name it. Many of them died in Babylon and Persia. So, according to the Christians and the Jews, this took place 70 years in Babylon and 30 years in Persia. A total of 100 years. But I told you many times before, I don't trust their dating. I don't trust the history they talk about. It is their story, not history. But let us go along and say 100 years. So remember, first 500 years in Egypt before slavery, 400 to 430 as slaves in Egypt. So almost 1,000 years when you put the desert, 40 years in the desert, almost 1,000 years. And now on top, almost 100 years, if we agree with what they say. And I'm so full of doubts about everything they say. I'm so suspicious of their miserable ignorance about history, about salvation, about everything they say. Nothing but lies. Very well. So, now we have 100 more years. Again, another example that when the Lord or God of Israel appeared to Abraham and promised him the Wadi of Egypt to the Euphrates forever, the Israelis never had it. Even when they were in Palestine, as we explained in the previous videos, they were slaves most of the time under the Palestinians. Remember Samson, this myth, stupid story? So they were almost all the time slaves to the Palestinians. So they never actually had the land. Very well. So now, preparation, the countdown is over, and now the Israeli Jews are outside, thrown out, kicked out, plugged out of Palestine. But they returned. And some rotten evangelists in the West, they lie from the Zionists, of course, stupid Zionists. Not all Christians are Zionists, not all Israelis are Zionists, but among them live those rotten Zionists who lie all the time, compulsive liars. They say that God promised to bring them back from the land of the north and from Egypt. That's a lie. God did not promise that. So how did they manage to come back to Palestine? That's question number one. And with their return, something extremely dangerous took place. The rise of a secret organization that live among us today, doing all kind of evil stuff, named the Masons. So, let's see how they managed to return from Persia and Babylon, and what's the story of the beginning of this secret organization that's corrupting so bad on earth, all over the planet. And a matter of fact, next time. Take care.